Okay, welcome back to the Friday Club. Today's break time with interview is with Jason Hoppner, Director of Marketing and Admissions at Dulwich College, Singapore. Jason, welcome and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, happy to be here.
I know that lots of our subscribers will be really interested in your thoughts around data-led decision-making, particularly in such a highly competitive market that you're in Singapore. How do you stay ahead of the curve in such a competitive market?
Indeed, it's a very mature and competitive market here in Singapore, and as you know, we've got some very established school brands, and more coming every year, it seems. So unlike many other markets, I guess Singapore is a little bit unique in that we can't enroll international local Singaporeans except for very specific reasons. So schools rely almost entirely on expatriate enrollment. So you can imagine with COVID and just the impact on global mobility, the impact that's had on the market here. And so that competitiveness has only further increased in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. More capacity, less students makes for extremely challenging conditions for schools to operate in. So I guess, look, our approach is really centered on three areas, I guess you could say. Firstly, and fundamental is improving our research capabilities and gaining a better understanding of who our target parents are, what their key drivers for choice are when it comes to international schools. Secondly, being far more targeted and deliberate in our approach to marketing. And so making sure we're hitting the right channels, speaking to the right audience, really making sure we're getting efficiencies in every marketing dollar we spend. And thirdly, I guess, is really harnessing the power of parent advocacy. I guess in general, how we stay ahead of the curve is we're just trying to bring a lot more science to what we do.
So where do your students come from out of interest if they're not from the local area? Are there any markets that are really strong for you?
Yeah, as you can imagine, I mean, Dulwich being a very strong UK brand, so our largest demographic or nationality demographic is UK, but then we've got a good mix of it, like 40% are from the UK, but then after that we've got a good chunk of Aussies like myself. China's a big growing market in Singapore. A lot of families relocating from mainland China to Singapore. And then it's just smattering. So we've got 50 plus nationalities, Korean, Japanese, the US, Canada, India, for example. So, we don't lie when we say we're an international school. We really are an international school. And that means it's really a dynamic and exciting environment to work in.
Really sounds it. It sounds really fascinating. Jason, one of the things that you've talked to me about previously is the Dulwich customer experience. Could you tell our listeners what the Dulwich customer experience is for you?
Yes, it's an area I'm really passionate about. So look, at Dulwich, we view customer experience as being, how would I explain it, the sum of all experiences, memories, and moments our customers have, either before, during, or after their involvement with our brand. We affectionately refer to this as the Dulwich experience, or DX. So we like to put labels on things. And simply put, it's how parents, students, and even staff, for that matter, perceive their interactions with Dulwich over time. So everything we do within Dulwich comes back to that DX. It's about putting the customer first in every decision we make. And I think what many schools sometimes fail to realize is the lifetime value of a family in an international school can be really significant. The customer lifetime value, or CLV, is a really important metric and something that we look at closely here at Dulwich. But we've been open for about 8 years now, and we've had families with multiple children who have been here since the start. So the lifetime value for that family is nearly $700,000 to date. So, if you're lucky enough to have stayed in a 5-star resort, you think about the customer experience from the moment you walk through the front door, and you may be paying $500 a night, for example, a far cry from $700,000. But every interaction, every experience during that stay, it's all been carefully curated to ensure you walk away wanting to come back and wanting to tell your friends how great it was. And so here we view our responsibility to customer experience the same way. It's not just striving to be good, but really aiming to be great and delivering a service commensurate with that customer lifetime value.
Absolutely. It sounds as though for you, retention is as much a marketing role as recruiting of new pupils is.
No, absolutely. And so there's a lot that goes into that retention piece, and our communications team do an amazing job of curating communication within the school and making sure it's hitting the right channels, getting the right messages out. Parent advocacy is a huge thing. We want to make sure that our parents know exactly, all the amazing things that are happening in the school on a daily basis. And I was surprised when we started in that there was so much great stuff happening, but we didn't even know about it. Our parents didn't always know what was happening. And so if we want our parents to be excited about the brand, we need to make sure they know about it. And so when they come in contact with potential families, they can talk passionately about all the things happening in the school. So yeah, that's been a big part of it. But not every family is a Dulwich family, and we're not the right school for every family. And so part of it is making sure that we're attracting right fit families, and the parents we do have in the school, they buy into the ethos and values that we wish to, I guess, impart on our students, and that's a really important thing that we're doing.
Absolutely. And you did tell me a lot about the peer-to-peer advocacy that you have amongst your parents. Possibly, could you talk about, Jason, how you use that peer-to-peer advocacy to help market your school?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I guess peer-to-peer in a school setting, I guess translates to parent-to-parent. And I think most of us know in the school sector that research consistently ranks recommendation as one of the leading drivers of choice for parents. And prospective parents often rely on recommendations within their own network or sphere of influence, you could say, when choosing a school. But for parents relocating from overseas who don't have an established network in Singapore, I mean, that's really difficult. So they're often seeking feedback on schools from other parents on chat forums, Facebook groups, review websites. So we know parents are craving that authentic feedback, and from parents who have experienced life at the school, whether it be the good, the bad, the ugly. And we know universities have been harnessing the power of peer-to-peer recruitment for some time now. And a number of platforms exist that enable prospective students to connect to current students to facilitate live chats. So we were really excited when last year we became the first international school globally to embed a parent-to-parent chat function on our site. And so our parents are our customers, and their advocacy and endorsement is probably the most valuable recruitment tool we have. It's no different to hotels, restaurants, most other industries these days. Any product you buy now, almost always customers will seek reviews from existing customers who have bought the same product. So it was really a no-brainer for us. And to be honest, we couldn't be happy with the way the platform has performed. We didn't know what it was going to be like at the beginning. Obviously, leadership in the school were a bit skeptical at first about why are you putting current parents, in with prospective parents, what if they say the wrong thing? But it's really that authenticity in conversation that we're trying to achieve. And as I said, it's not just about our parents talking passionately about our school and helping us sell the brand, but it's helping prospective parents identify if we're the right school for them. And so what we've discovered is, yes, schools can be great at marketing and we're great at talking the talk, but that peer-to-peer platform really allows prospective parents to have honest conversations with our current families. And we don't ask them to lie or tell us how great we are. We want them to be authentic in the way they talk about it, the good, the bad, the ugly. So we've been really excited, and we know that more schools are sort of catching up to and putting those platforms in place. And I think it will just become a standard in due course.
I think we have to rely on our current customers to talk about the brand and talk about how good the school and the education is. So I'm really glad that that's been successful for you. You've also talked quite a bit about researching, and I know that you have a very specific Dulwich research framework that informs your marketing strategy. You've also talked a little about finding the right sorts of families for Dulwich College Singapore. How does your research framework feed into finding those right families for you?
Yeah, look, so a great example, I guess, is in our admissions team, we've got 2 staff who have been formally trained to be our, what we refer to as our Dulwich research champions. Everyone gets a fancy title here. So in addition to their day job as admission officers, they've been trained to conduct qualitative and quantitative research to better understand all our stakeholders, whether it be our parents, our students and our staff, keeping fingers on the pulse with regard to the market, socioeconomic changes, regulatory environments, and of course our competitors. So I guess what does that look like on a daily basis? So, you know, we're constantly running things like building customer experience surveys, analysing survey data, building dashboards, running focus groups, maintaining competitor data sets, and importantly, developing parent personas. So really sort of taking a lot of that data and trying to unpack that and work out who are our parents. So as you can imagine, I mean, I think where a lot of schools can struggle sometimes is trying to be something for everyone. And that can be really challenging because you end up spending a lot of money sometimes, you know, attracting families that they come along for tour and they're like, this is not the right school for us. Or, you know, they might enroll in the school and then a year later they leave because you're not the right school. So for us, there's some real fundamental value that we have by building this research framework and really trying to target right fit families, because it means we can be more targeted in our approach, where we're reducing churn on a yearly basis. And it really means then we've got a more engaged parent base who are right fit for our school. They're happy with the choice that they've made. They don't feel like they've been sold when they come into the school, and we can keep them for longer. So I guess, look, you know, outside of that, it's small things. If you think about COVID, for example, and just the changes in the market. And so understanding those right fit families and also the value and size of those different segments and the drivers of conversion. So with the example of personas, so we have about 5 key parent personas. And so their drivers for choice are vastly different. Their expectations, what they're looking for on that admissions journey is vastly different as well. And so being able to identify a potential family, what their potential persona might be, and then really curate the admissions journey to hit those emotional drivers, it just means we're moving them faster through the journey, through the funnel, I should say, getting better conversion. And that means our team is spending less time, I guess, with families that may not be the right fit, because we can identify them much earlier on in the piece.
Absolutely. Could you give us an example of an ideal parent persona, Jason?
I suppose when you look, yeah, it is. I mean, I think for we're an academically selected school, so you know, first and foremost, I mean, that's sort of a key consideration for families looking at coming into Dulwich. But outside of that, I mean, a lot of you know, typically a typical persona might be this kind of tiger mum type persona, I guess you could say, particularly from some Asian families who are looking for brand. They're looking for, you know, Oxbridge matriculation. They're looking for high performance, high IB results. Now, obviously, the experience and the expectations of what that family, when they come in for a tour, they have a conversation with our team. It's really they don't want the fluff. They want the specifics. They want the data. They want to. There's very specific sort of touch points that we need to focus on that we know will help drive conversion. And that can be very different if we think about maybe a younger family coming from somewhere like Australia who, you know, might be looking at a early years product for their child, for example, very much looking at less about seeing the school results, but more looking at, I don't know, teacher quality, or they might be looking at the type of curriculum we're delivering in the early years, for example. Is it more how can I say, is it more play-based, for example? Is it more structured, for example? And so there isn't necessarily an ideal persona for us. It's just about identifying that, you know, each family probably fits a particular type of family, and it's really about customizing the journey and understanding what their key emotional touch points are likely to be and what's important to them. So yeah, as I said, not, you know, there's going to be people within those personas that they're not the right fit for our school for a variety of reasons, but how we take those families through the journey or through the admissions funnel is largely going to be similar.
And so it's about finding what is a real emotional pull for those families then.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For some it's more emotional. For some families are much more pragmatic. They just want to know, give me the information. I want to get from A to B really quickly. I don't need the fluff. I don't need the sell. I've already researched everything. They want a much more transactional experience. And some want that more emotional journey. It's a different consideration.
And mirroring the way that the customer interacts with you as a brand, I guess, is really important in that admissions journey.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Brilliant. So you've talked a lot then about, focus groups and the data that you've collected. Has there been anything that's come out of those focus groups, any data, any research that you've done that has been a surprise for you?
Yes, there's been a lot, actually. I think a lot of the research we've done. So as an academically selective school, I think we just assumed all of the time that the reason for people maybe choosing a school like Dulwich was about, our academic rigor, our scores, our matriculation. But we went through some fairly robust focus groups recently and basically just spun that on its head. It didn't rank anywhere near as high as what we thought it would. And that was really interesting. We really assumed that there was this kind of high achieving family that this typical family, and that was a typical Dulwich family, but it's actually not. I mean, the vast majority of our families are coming here because of the holistic nature of our education. They're looking for those soft skills. They're looking to develop character and empathy. And yes, results are a great byproduct, but it's nowhere near a top 3 or 4 driver for why they've chosen the school. I think that philosophy about if you get the fundamentals right, you teach empathy and compassion, you teach character, and you help young students develop that, the results will happen. And then it's not all about the results, because that's only for a certain group of students that want to, choose that academic pathway. We also have plenty of students who are choosing, the arts or sport or whatever it happens to be. So that for us really was a game changer, walking away realizing that we don't need to be pushing sort of IB results and Oxbridge matriculation success stories down parents, because they're not looking for that. They really want that holistic broadness of what we deliver. So that really changed the way that we promote and talk about the brand in the market.
Really interesting. It's really interesting to hear how these differences come about. And I know, Jason, that you've actually seen growth in student numbers despite all of the challenges that we've had with COVID. Do you think that there's any one thing that contributed the most to that growth in the last 18 months?
I don't think there's one. Well, I think the research element that has really underpinned everything that we've done, that's probably been the biggest contributor to the success. So we think about our marketing, for example, and I guess unlike like many other schools that market, when I first started the role, we were really limited to basically doing print advertising. So we were on back covers of magazines. We didn't really have a digital SEM strategy. We did a good job of letting people know that, hey, we're Dulwich, we're here, but we didn't really tell people what we are and why we're different and why people should care. So I guess over the last 18 months, and we had our, obviously post commencement of COVID, if you will, the August intake last year, and we're leading up to our second intake since COVID, in the next 2 months. We've really been sort of curating a marketing strategy that I guess tries to tell a story, and most marketers will talk about telling stories often. So we want to understand why did our own families choose Dulwich, and that was all sort of underpinned through research we did with our current families. Why families chose to leave Dulwich, that was really important. So talking about right fit and wrong fit families. And so that's, as I said, shaped the strategy. And in the end, we've basically adopted a strategy that's centered on building awareness around the number of core brand attributes. And that started sort of, just when COVID kicked in early last year. And they were attributes we wanted to be identified and recognized for in the market. So these attributes, of course, are aligned to what we consider to be our own strengths. But through research, we also knew that they are fundamental key drivers for why families choose schools, and they're things that they specifically look for when they're comparing schools against each other. So we knew if we focus all of our marketing efforts on really highlighting what we're doing in each of those spaces, we were going to, you know, half the work's already been done. And we also had to focus on ensuring that we're getting those right fit families. And so we certainly shifted our marketing towards being much more around holistic education, about ethos, values, teaching empathy and compassion in young children, and moving away from, you know, maybe some of your listeners might, you know, maybe an old boy sort of standing on a rugby pitch with his arms, that very kind of, you know, traditional independent school type posture. So we certainly shifted towards a much more holistic approach to the way we market, and that's had huge success for us. And we're tapping into families who probably had a preconception about what our brand stood for. Now we're telling that story and really educating the market about what it is about Dulwich and changing minds. We're seeing that inquiry has increased, conversion has increased, and so when we compare to, I guess, what's happening in the market, where we're seeing, you know, the pie is obviously shrinking with less numbers coming in, we're just getting a bigger chunk of that pie. So I think, you know, research leading to a much more targeted way in which we market and talk about the school, that seems to be working well. And importantly, our comms team doing a great job in building advocacy amongst our parents, and that's probably the full life cycle, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's really wonderful to hear, you know, how successful that's been for you, because I know that COVID has, you know, given schools all over the world a huge number of challenges. So I'm really, really pleased that the research has had such a big impact for you. Just before our break time is over then, Jason, and I let you go back to your day job, one question that we always like to ask our guests is what their favourite thing about their role in school marketing is.
Yeah, well,
if it's hard to pick just one, I know.
Yeah, I think, look, as you touched on at the beginning, I mean, it's, you know, Singapore in particular is a really competitive market, and I suppose, you know, we probably all have seen how there's clear expectations for schools to become far more sophisticated in our approach to marketing and admissions. And so I think, look, my favourite part of the role is challenging the status quo. It's looking beyond our own sector for new initiatives and ideas. And I think that's really exciting. And, you know, yes, look, schools still need to establish compelling value propositions, demonstrating ROI. You know, we need to articulate our unique selling proposition. But, you know, we kind of were having a discussion about this the other week, and we said our youngest parents in Dulwich now are in their 20s. You know, they're the Instagram, Snapchat generation. So when you start thinking about how that generation consumes information, how instantaneously they expect to receive information, look, there's a big change coming. And so I think for us, like, you know, to be at the forefront of some of these new initiatives is really exciting. So, you know, look, I'm not telling my age, but I'm not an Instagram, Snapchat generation. But for me, that's the amazing part, is looking at this very different generation of parents coming through and the way they consume information. And we need to be able to resonate with this generation and to communicate with this. And that's going to change everything that we do in schools. And we've seen how other industries are already changing the way they market their products, the way that they communicate to prospective parents, prospective clients. So that's what's exciting, is that, you know, we've been doing the same thing for a long time, and yes, it's changed here and there, but I think there's a wholesale change coming to our sector very soon. That's exciting. So riding the wave.
That is exciting, and being part of it and contributing to it. I can hear how passionate you are about it, Jason, and I'm really, really grateful that you shared your insight with us today. So thank you for coming on and talking with us on the Friday Club.
No, that's my pleasure.
We're fortunate to have you. And we hope that, you know, we'll be able to catch up next academic year and see how you're getting on then too.
Absolutely. Face to face even one day when we can fly.
Oh gosh, touch wood. That would be the dream, wouldn't it? So yeah.
Indeed.
I hope so. Okay, thank you so much, Jason, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Cheers.
Thank you.